How y'all doing? Welcome to Policy Matters. This is your boy MongoSlade. So, I saw something maybe a couple weeks ago that I thought was very interesting that I wanted to talk about, and that is a Gallup poll that was published March the 29th, 2021. It says U.S. church membership falls below the majority for the first time. And I saw a lot of people celebrating this. So I figured it's something worth talking about because I as I talk a lot about, I went to school for this kind of stuff, looking at the social system, not sociology. I was actually more of an urban studies kind of guy. Um, but my focus is on economics and budgets and shit like that. But this is right in my wheelhouse. So I want to read this article. And I also want to go through a book that I was forced to read for school that I think actually kind of explains a little bit of this. It's called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. It's a classic book that most people would never actually touch, that I just happen to have on my bookshelf because I am a reader of weird stuff. And but I had to read this for class, and I just loved it so much I kept it. But there is an entire chapter in there about uh, the decline in church membership. And this book is old, right? This book is really old, but it tracks the membership in all organizations, all social memberships, and all social organizations, from bowling leagues. That's why it's called Bowling Alone, because it used to be bowling leagues, but now bowling leagues are gone. I'm old enough to where my aunt used to go bowling, and I used to go with her, and that's when I actually used to play in arcades and stuff, because her bowling league would had an arcade in it. So I would go in there and play like Mortal Kombat and all that kind of stuff. So I know what a bowling league is. Some people are too young. They're like, what the hell is that? It's like, yeah, there used to be bowling leagues in the United States. People used to have social clubs. There used to be like the Lions Club and uh, all the various fraternities and different things like that. Those things used to they actually used to do stuff. But those things have been in decline for decades. Church is just one of them. So when I see this article from Gallup and it says that U.S. church membership falls below the majority, I'm like, oh, okay. I read this book almost 10 years ago. So we can we can go through some of what the book says. But first, let's go through this article. So it says the story highlights in 2020, 47% of U.S. adults belong to church, synagogue, or mosque, down more than 20 points from turn of the century. Change primarily due to rise in Americans with no religious preference. So let's go through it. It says Washington, D.C. Americans' membership in houses of worship continued to decline last year, dropping below 50% for the first time in Gallup's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down 50% in 2018 and down 70% from 1999. This is amazing. U.S. church membership was 73% when Gallup first measured it in 1937 and remained near 70% for the next 6 decades before beginning a steady decline around the turn of the 21st century. As many Americans celebrate Easter and Passover this week, Gallup updates a 2019 analysis that examined the decline in church membership over the last 20 years. Gallup asked Americans a battery of questions on their religious attitudes and practices twice each year. The following analysis of declines in church membership relies on 3-year aggregates from 1998 to 2000, when church membership averaged 69%, 2008, and 2010, which was 62%, and 2018 to 2020, which was 49%. The aggregates allow for reliable estimates by subgroup, with each 3-year period consisting of data from more than 6,000 U.S. adults. So it says the decline in church membership is primarily a function of the increasing number of Americans who express no religious preference. Over the past 2 decades, the percentage of Americans who do not identify with any religion has grown from 8% from 1998 to 2000 to 13% in 2008 to 2010 and 21% over the past 3 years. As would be expected, Americans without a religious preference are highly unlikely to belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque, although a small proportion, 4% in 2018 to 2020 data, say they do. That figure is down from 10% between 1998 and 2000. Given the nearly perfect alignment between not having a religious preference and not belonging to a church, the 13% point increase in no religious affiliation since 1980-2000 appears to account for more than half of the 20-point decline in church membership over the same time. Most of the drop can be attributed to a decline in formal church membership among Americans who do have a religious preference. Between 1998 and 2000, an average 73% of religious Americans belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque. Over the past 3 years, the average has fallen to 60%. So here's the good thing. Here's the response that they have. Generational differences linked to change in church membership. Church membership is strongly correlated with age, as 66% of traditionalists, U.S. adults born before 1946, belong to a church, compared to 58% of baby boomers, 50% of those in Generation X, and 36% of millennials. So, there's more to this, and I'm not going to read all of this whole article. It's just no reason to. But they said that it's basically population change. That, as generations get older, church becomes less important. The younger kids don't care about church. That seems to be the big picture here. They're going to break it down by denomination and all that type of stuff, but I have no interest in doing that. So, church membership is going down, mainly due to youth not caring so much about church, which of course is almost the exact same outcome that Robert Putnam came up with several years ago when he wrote Bowling Alone. So church is very important, especially in certain communities. Church is very important. The Arabs, synagogue, mosque is very important. In the black community, the church is very important. You often see how church gathers up, especially older people. They were correct in the Gallup poll and talking about older people, getting them out to vote and helping them, sometimes helping younger people get jobs, sometimes. But this is some of the interesting things that you get from church that I'm going to talk about from Robert Putnam. So he says that church is an important incubator for civic skills, civic norms, and community interest and civic engagement. In church, people learn skills such as speeching, that's not a thing, writing speeches, performing speeches, running meetings, budgeting, different things like that. It also creates a strong social system. But despite that, Putnam found that involvement in social life beyond church, Sunday school, Bible study, church socials, or whatever, fell just as fast as church membership. And he attributed the decline to generational differences because younger people do not care about church. And he says that also there is a percentage of people who are, quote, believers, but not belongers. In other words, these are people who still believe in whatever religion. They just don't go to church. And this is one of the things that Gallup was trying to find out, is that people have no religious preference now. So we've gone from believers but not belongers to, well, I just don't care about religion at all. We're becoming a more secular society. That's what Gallup is saying anyway. So let's jump back to Putnam. So Putnam says that as church loses influence in society, that you get two groups forming. You get what's called, he calls it the devout and the unchurched. And these creates culture wars between the two. Because you often have evangelical, especially evangelical Christians, they will work within their own community, but they will not work with people outside of it, especially as the broader communities. As different people move in and different things like that, people tend to stay within themselves. But the culture wars are a very important thing, because I believe the culture wars actually helped start this problem. I'm not going to read you any data, but when you see on the news, you typically are going to have the culture war problem. Is abortion is one issue. You're going to have a lot of people who don't care, right? There's a lot of people who don't care. And then you have the very devout religious, the Muslims, the Christians, especially the Catholics. They do care because that's a human life. And there's no two ways around it. And then you have the largely unchurched, those people who are going around saying stuff like, it's not a person, it's just a clump of cells. Clump of cells don't have rights. They've called, the fertilized egg a parasite. So you have that kind of stuff going on. You also have a lot of the transgenderism and a lot of the gay rights stuff. You have a lot of what they call the culture war stuff going on now. And it's being accepted largely because we're a secular society. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other. Personally, I am an agnostic, which means I was an atheist when I was 20. I kind of backed off of that. I started looking into different religions, and that actually informed my writing because I write a lot about, not about religion, but I write stories and use sort of religious mythologies sometimes in them. Because I actually started looking around at different religions. I was raised Christian, so that's pretty much all I knew. I never met a Muslim until I was like, so I was like in my 20s. So, but I lived around them my whole life. I just didn't know what they believed, So that kind of stuff, it takes time to work through. But ultimately, the more secular society becomes, the more you have cultural issues that are going to bloom, like the gay rights issue, like the trans issue, like the abortion issue, like, those kind of things, prayer in church, prayer in church, that's not a problem. Prayer in schools, right? Not just that, but lockdowns. You see these governors out here locking down churches, saying that churches can't, meet because it's a pandemic. You can throw a big bonfire when you win a presidency. You can march in the street and do whatever you want. If somebody gets shot by the police, you can burn down Target, but you can't go to church, right? So you start seeing that kind of stuff, and you start seeing open hostility towards those kinds of people. Give you another example, and this goes into the gay and transgendered issue, is the bake the cake situation, where you had the guy. He was in I want to say Colorado, and he is the guy who, since he's been on the news for refusing to bake a gay cake, a gay wedding cake, people keep going to his bakery and then suing him for not baking the cake. So now they're going in there off asking for transgendered cakes and gender non-conforming cakes and all this kind of stuff. And then when the guy says, no, I'm not doing it, they sue him. And he's constantly paying money out of his pocket to fight these frivolous lawsuits, which, if we had principles in this country, we could say, look, the guy doesn't have to do it. That's what private property rights. He has a right to his own property, for starters. He also has the sole right to his own labor. You do not own his labor. Whether you like it or not, you shouldn't be able to force a guy to bake a cake. Any cake that he doesn't want to bake. It doesn't matter if you were gay, black, or anything. If he didn't want to make a Spider-Man cake because he's a DC guy, he shouldn't have to make one. But we've gone far and beyond that, because we've got a lot of this forced secularization in society. And that's where I think where we're going with this, is that, you had via government fiat, prayer was kicked out of schools. And a lot of the small Christians, well, it's not even that prayer was kicked out of schools, because Muslims can still pray in schools. The Christian kids just can't, right? There was a situation, I believe, recently, probably not recently, probably a few years ago, where a football coach was fired because he prayed on the sidelines with his team, and they said it's discrimination against the atheist students. And so he was fired, even though nobody complained, None of the students complained anyway. None of the players complained. It was probably like some Karen parent who saw it from the crowd and complained. He was like a high school football coach, you know? That kind of stuff, because, teachers, they say teachers cannot force religion upon the students. They can't force you to stand up and do the Declaration of, not Declaration of Independence, but shit, what the hell? The Pledge of Allegiance. They can't force you to do any of that stuff anymore. And I'm not saying that they should. I'm just saying what it is, okay? So you have this situation where you've got forced secularization in society where people are being told you can't do this thing, right? And then they just kind of drop it because it's easier to not believe or than to be targeted for believing. Now, it used to be the opposite, right? It used to be the Christians were in the government and they were looking for different things to penalize people for, and being gay was one of them, and they would target you and, destroy your life. But now it's the other way around, where you've got the gays in the government and they're looking for Christians to destroy. They're looking for Christians to get kicked off Twitter, kicked off Facebook. There was like Planned Parenthood can be on Twitter talking about, how many babies they aborted today or aborted in this year. But, a Right to Life organization gets banned. There was a crazy story a couple of years ago where a Right to Life organization found out that Planned Parenthood was lying about the way they discarded aborted fetuses. But because it was an illegal, quote unquote, illegal recording, the organization is the ones who got in trouble. So when people start talking about this secularization of society and people not having any religious preference, you have to understand that there has been a prolonged, about 30 or 40 year attack on religion, especially Christianity, in the United States. They have taken things that were Christian and forced them to not be Christian. I recently, I'm in my 30s, and I just figured out, and somebody just told me the other day that Zelda was Christian. Now, Zelda was made in Japan. There's not a lot of Christians in Japan, but there's a lot of Catholic iconography in Zelda, but it was taken out. And a lot of people, I didn't know that. I had no idea. Assassin's Creed was a video game where you were fighting in the what was the Christian Muslim wars? What the fuck is it called? Oh my God, the Crusades. And then, now it's pirates, so when it was popular, it was Christians killing Muslims. Now it's, hey, people are pirates, they're Vikings, it was, it's that kind of thing. Sometimes you even will have situations where you saturated TV shows like Law and Order SVU with like pedophile priests. Not pedophile teachers, and there are more pedophile teachers than pedophile priests. But, according to the news and according to the media, priests are pedophiles, And you can see over time that does have an effect on people. Because if you do argue with people about church and stuff like that, that's what you will get. Like, a lot of them are pedophiles, or in the black community, it'd be a lot of them are grifters. It wasn't until recently where almost every black leader was a reverend or a pastor of some kind. Reverend Martin Luther King, Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson. It was just that over and over and over again. And it's like in recent years, you started seeing people basically just be like, and you still have Louis Farrakhan, who was a religious leader, technically. Not a Christian. He's a Muslim. He's not even real Muslim. He's not a Muslim. He's a black Muslim. It's different. I don't want to go into that. It's the same, but it's different. But now you have a lot of secular black activists. And with the secular black activists comes what? The gay issues, the trans issues. And sometimes most of these are women. and they're talking about our trans sisters and our, the Black Lives Matter, that where men are erased and the family structure doesn't have to care about two people in the family anymore. The parents that don't matter anymore. The mom is the only parent that matters. This kind of stuff has started to erode society, and it has consequences. I just talked about them with the Putnam. You have people who don't learn certain skills. They don't have a strong social group. Their social group becomes secular. And you start getting made fun of for believing in Sky Daddy because, nobody else believes it. So you tend not to believe it either. And then if you do believe it, you get made fun of. Or even worse, you get singled out. You become like the bake the cake guy. Like I remember clearly, I'm one of these IDW guys. Like there was a conversation between Ben Shapiro and Dave. What the fuck is that guy's name? Dave Rubin. And Dave Rubin asked Ben Shapiro, and they're friends. And he's like, "Would you come to my wedding?" Dave Rubin is gay. And Ben Shapiro was like, "Nope. Ben Shapiro is a Jew. He's an Orthodox Jew. He's not going to a gay wedding." They could agree to disagree on that. But you have no idea how many times I saw that clip among certain people who vote a certain way when that clip happened. You're like, this guy thinks that Dave Rubin thinks that Ben Shapiro is his friend, but he wouldn't come to his wedding. Ben Shapiro said, "Well, you're welcome to my house. You can bring your husband to my house and we'll eat dinner, but I'm not coming to your gay wedding. I don't condone gay weddings. I'm not going." And I'm like, it's very mature to be able to sit down and have that conversation, but that's not the conversation people want to have. They want you to obey. Now, Dave Rubin is also seemingly a little bit on the right wing. He's moving that way anyway. So he understood, he just kind of, accepted that Ben Shapiro has certain principles, and they can agree on a bunch of other things, even if they don't agree with that. But other people don't see it that way. They see, unless you accept every single thing that I say, we're enemies. And if you believe in Magic Sky Daddy that's going to send me to hell because I'm gay, then they're going to say you need to go to hell. Maybe you need to get embarrassed. Maybe you need to do, like, there was recently another thing that that just popped into my mind. The Lil Nas X Satan shoes and the twerking video where he did the gay twerk on the gay devil in his video. And black people saw that and was like, what in the hell was he doing? And then in the comment section to these tweets and in these YouTube videos and stuff like that, people would say, "Oh, well, you guys have said that gays are going to jail, going to hell anyway. So why not twerk with the devil?" And you would be like, what horrific crap. Like, you don't even have to believe in this stuff to see that there's something deeply wrong with it. Like, there's something deeply wrong with it, with, people accepting this kind of thing. And it's weird. It's weird. And it's all you have to do. It doesn't take that much. That's why I say I don't want to bury you in information and bury you in statistics and all that type of stuff. I just like to have a conversation. When you see that stuff like church membership is falling, and you see debauchery on its way up, where you can't say anything negative about pedophiles on Twitter because they're a protected class. You have people spending money to study pedophilia, and they're being protected because they're coming up with a bunch of excuses for pedophiles. They've been doing that for years. John Money, that was one of the fathers of the transgender movement. Okay? He was protected for years. He molested 2 boys who both committed suicide. You can't talk about that. You can't have that conversation. And I'm not saying that, religion would have stopped it. I'm saying that definitely if we had some evangelicals in society at the time, John Money would have got snatched out of his office and and put on trial. They would have said, what are you doing? For starters, you calling a little boy a girl. Secondly, you're forcing him to do sex acts with his brother. He would have at least gone to prison. But we lived in a society, and this was like, I think it was in the 70s, actually. You know, maybe 70s, maybe the 80s, when this actually happened. It was debauchery all the way around. The kinds of people who hate religion, sometimes flat out hate God, have been running society. And like I said, I say this as an agnostic. You have people out there who hate God. And they're happy that church membership is going down. They're thrilled about it. Because it only means that nobody is no longer there to judge their debauchery. And that if nobody's there to judge their debauchery, then their debauchery becomes normal. My degenerate fetishes become normal because there's nobody there to tell me otherwise. I can be a full hedonist. And you see it all the time. Like, you've seen these people in Hollywood. Look at Pedowood. It's insane what they do in Hollywood. There was a guy who worked in Nickelodeon, had a foot fetish, was putting little girls on TV barefoot to live through his foot fetishes. Hollywood. Epstein. Okay? We need to go further than that. All these women who were trading their bodies for sex and all this type of stuff. The rise of the OnlyFans and every other girl you come across on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok being nothing but a booty shaker. The debauchery of society. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be turtlenecks all the time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it is outright insane. And I don't even completely agree with people who go to church all the time, because a lot of them are anti-porn and, want to curb freedom of speech and freedom of expression and all that type of stuff. I'm not with that. But I am on their side when, we know kids use Facebook and we know kids use Twitter, and there's people titties out or flat out sucking dick on Twitter. It's a problem. That's a problem evangelicals and Christians and Muslims alike, the Jews as well, will be like, no, this needs to be fixed. But you will get banned if you say something negative about pedophiles. You will not be banned if you suck a dick on Twitter, male or female. Male or female. It could be a gay man, it could be a woman, it could be anybody. It is not a problem. But say bad words, call a man a man, and he calls himself a girl, you'll get banned. How strange is that? That doesn't even hurt anybody. That doesn't expose any people who are underage to sex and sexual materials. It doesn't even really hurt nobody's feelings. But that's the society we live in now. It's a secular society where there are no rules except for the ones made up by political commissars who sit behind desks. So, hooray! Death to church. All right, man. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.